What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. I am so excited about today's video because we're going to be talking all about wild foraging as it pertains to look-alike plants. This is a very common question and concern that we get coming into our inbox and a lot of our Facebook groups is, I've been growing this plant for the year or for a couple years, and I think I know what it is, but I didn't plant it, so I'm not 100% sure. Can anyone identify what this is to tell me if I can eat it or not? And this is something that, broken into two different tangents here. One tangent is that puts a lot of stress on others as well as myself when we're asked those questions, because if in fact it is edible, you're safe. If it is not edible, we're endangering you, and you're putting a lot of pressure on us to properly identify, know exactly what it is without being there and having a whole lot of context to why it's there and those types of things. It also puts a lot of stress on others as well, and that's why foraging is constantly kind of seen as a very hidden and taboo topic to talk about, because there are a lot of lookalikes that are very poisonous and can in fact kill you even in small amounts. And so you really need to make sure that you know what you're talking about first, and be careful when you're talking about it, asking for people's opinions, because there are a lot of people that don't mind giving their opinion, but then when someone winds up dead, who's at fault? The person who ate it or the person who gave the opinion on it? And so that's really why we take a kind of a stance back and say, this is on you to properly identify these. We want to point out some of the common lookalikes so you have more information out there to make a more informed decision about what you're about to eat or planning on eating. And it also is going to serve as an example for just how close some of these look like, because they've even fooled me. Now, the first lookalike plant that we're going to talk about is wild blackberry. I don't want you guys to get this confused with actual blackberry, because they have a very similar name. One has wild in front of it. Now, where that comes in is because blackberries can grow in the wild if a bird eats blackberry seeds and spreads them around. A blackberry found in the wild is not a wild blackberry. This is wild blackberry. Wild blackberry does not bear fruit, and it does not actually produce a blackberry. It in fact looks identical to blackberry, and this one had me fooled for 2 years before I realized what it was. And that's because it did not provide any fruit, and it did not actually form any thorns like a blackberry should. This plant is thornless. It actually looks identical to a blackberry in the leaves, the colors, and even the growth habits. But it does not form a cane like a blackberry should. All of your cane fruits will form a thick, woody center cane. Wild blackberries, on the other hand, do not have any thorns, and the only identifying factor that would have you fooled is that they look like a thornless blackberry. So just kind of keep that in mind, that they have 3 leaves. They are, they're serrated leaves, so they have the serrations all on the leaves, and you would commonly think of this as a blackberry. It looks identical to a blackberry, but again, no thorns. The stem is nice and smooth, and also it does not bear fruit after 2 years. And the very common way to identify this as kind of like what I would consider false blackberry is that it does not form a center cane. The next plant we're going to talk about is false strawberry, otherwise known as Indian strawberry or mock strawberry. Now, it gets its name because of its uncanny look-alike to actual strawberries. Many gardeners will grow these and then in fact eat the fruit because of the fact that the fruit looks so much like a regular strawberry, only to find out that their lips begin breaking out in a rash, their tongue begins to scratch and itch, and it forms a lot of oral discomfort and kind of contact point irritation, because the mock strawberry is not a real strawberry. And now, it's not deemed as toxic by the FDA, but based on that description of what can happen if you eat it, you probably don't want to be eating it. So basically, this plant, because it is so similar to an actual strawberry, you have to be able to identify them precisely. Otherwise, you really don't have a very good way of knowing if it's a strawberry or not. So we're going to go through it, because I do in fact actually have one growing right here in this bed, only about 3 feet away from an actual strawberry bed. So this actually is a very real life example of how, you might think, oh, I just had a seed from my strawberry bed get spread over by a bird and it's sprouted here and it's growing. not true. You have to be able to identify it precisely, or just pull it out. When in doubt, pull it out. I like that saying because there's a lot of gardeners that would just leave it and eat it. But the false strawberry can be identified pretty simply by a couple different things. Number one, you didn't plant it there. So with strawberries, especially false strawberries, if you didn't plant it there and you don't know what it is, just pull it out. I would much rather you guys grow real strawberries, real cultivars of strawberries that are going to produce better and going to be, obviously there's not going to be any irritation from eating a real strawberry. So if you did not plant it, that's a first sign that you should just pull it out. The second thing that you can identify actually by identifying it, if you want to keep it in the ground, because there are alpine strawberries and there are kind of more wild strains of strawberries that are they're perfectly edible and they're very delicious, but you have to be able to identify them. And that's where if you don't have the confidence of doing so, it's better to err on the side of caution. But the second thing that you can do to identify a real strawberry from a false strawberry is in the leaves. So I have one growing right here. And the leaves themselves look identical to a strawberry. So you'll notice here, the leaves, focus on that, there you go. The leaves actually go straight out. There's no overlapping, and they go straight out. With strawberries, I'm gonna grab one real quick. Strawberries tend to overlap their leaves. With the mock strawberries, the leaves go straight out, almost like a 3-leaf clover. Whereas with strawberries, you can clearly see that there's some overlap where the leaves are formed. The next thing that you can identify is that the leaves themselves on a regular strawberry, an edible strawberry, a real strawberry, are far more serrated. There's far more serrations going around the outer perimeter of the leaf. Whereas with false strawberry, the serrations only go about halfway up the leaf. But then also the very last indication that's almost like foolproof is the fruit itself. Now, don't get confused. I'm going to show you a picture of what false strawberry looks like. Now, you don't have to necessarily look at that for very long to say, something doesn't look quite right about that. And that's because the fruit itself is vastly different from a strawberry. Even though at first glance it looks very strawberry-like, there's quite a few kind of dead giveaways. All right, the next plant that I have here is Purslane. So this is real Purslane, and Purslane can be identified by the kind of red stem, the plump succulent stem that it has, as well as the leaves. Now this is kind of a poor example because this was actually accidentally pulled out from our bed here when we were planting our garlic. But see, there's some more right over here actually. So you can see here, these leaves are very, very plump. And when they're plump, they also have kind of a glittery appearance to them. Now, obviously these are kind of beaten up and they're very small, so they don't have as glittery of an appearance right now, but you can tell from that kind of succulent look, pink stem, and also when you break them, they're going to give kind of like a gooey, a gooey gel that they're going to emit, and it's going to be clear, and that is Purslane. Now, the very common lookalike that very, very closely resembles Purslane is known as Scourge. This is Scourge. Now, Scourge forms very low to the ground, extremely low to the ground. It has leaves that are rounded, much like Purslane, but they're not plump. They're very flat. If you look at how flat those leaves are, though, that is a very clear dead giveaway of Scourge versus Purslane. All right, the first variety of dandelion is European dandelion. This is known as Italian dandelion. And how you know that it's Italian dandelion is by the offset serrations on the leaves. Very, very sharp serrations, and it's a very elongated leaf, and it produces a ton of leaves throughout the main base of the plant here. This is actually in the family of endive, and you can actually eat this. It's extremely nutritious and very delicious. It's a mineral miner, and it's one that we recommend growing and not spraying weed killer on. So this is Italian dandelion. And then just over here, we actually have another one. This is another Italian dandelion, just a little bit bigger version. You can see that. And then right here, you'll actually see common dandelion. Now, common dandelion has leaves that are not alternating. They are directly across from each other. This is still another dandelion, still edible, but you can see that it's clearly different than its offset cousin. Its offset cousin, the Italian dandelion, in that they do not alternate, and they are just more like a Christmas tree shape. So still edible, a little more bitter, not as domesticated, but still delicious. And then right here, just growing just next door, is a different type of dandelion, but one that is extremely bitter and not one you want to eat. And this is known as false dandelion. So false dandelion produces leaves identical to real dandelion. In fact, it's growing right next to another dandelion, but you'll see these leaves here. These leaves they just have very, very small serrations on the leaves, and they do not have a really thick stem going down the center. They're also more red in the center of the plant rather than white on the center of the dandelions. This one here is extremely bitter, and it's one that causes a lot of gardeners to misidentify, and they'll go harvest these. And I'll tell you what, if you ever have tasted a bitter green, this is about 10 times more bitter than the bitterest radicchio you've ever eaten in your entire life. All right, and the fifth and final plant that I do not want you guys to even attempt to identify and eat is wild carrot. Now, wild carrot, otherwise known as Queen Anne's lace, is edible, and it's just an undomesticated version of our carrots that we grow in our garden. However, the look-alike is extremely toxic. It's known as poison hemlock. Now, poison hemlock, even in small amounts, can be fatal. This is why we save this one for last, because this is one that a lot of gardeners and foragers make the mistake of thinking, oh, this is really easy to identify. It's carrots. What else can be poisonous, right? It's got to be a carrot. It forms a root much like a carrot. It looks so similar in its leaf type and even flower type that you think it's carrot, but it's poisonous. But poison hemlock has leaves that are a little more spread out apart. They're a little more separated, and they do not have the very indicative purple dot on the center of the flower. It's just a plain white flower with some space in between each flower pad. Compare that to Queen Anne's lace or wild carrot. There's a little purple dot in the center of the flower. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. And as always, we'll catch you all tomorrow on the next episode. We're gonna be cleaning out the garden. It's pretty much done. The peppers did not survive the 26-degree weather that we had that I figured they wouldn't. And so we did in fact get some flurries that night, not the quarter inch they were expecting, but that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. So come along, we'll go clean out the garden tomorrow, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. All right, go big or go home, everyone.